800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason here on this Wednesday, just to give you an idea here on commercial real estate. I think this is the next eye of the hurricane here. So we've already, the banks have been weakened, right? Every bank that isn't the big 6 to 8 banks has been materially weakened. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of deposits pulled. Now you start thinking about, okay, what does their debt look like now? Because that was a math problem, right? Now we're saying, well, we got a math problem. Now we think we got a debt problem on top of it. Commercial real estate is 43% of small banks' loans. To give you perspective, I told you it's a $5 trillion market. Small banks are $2 trillion of the $5 trillion. So this is not Silicon Valley. This is not First Republic, because those are more like regional banks. We're talking small banks. So these are going to be banks outside the top 100 banks. And this is going to be another huge problem. So big of a problem. The Wharton School, Jeremy Siegel, he's been out on CNBC at least twice. I think he was on Friday. I think he was again on Monday, talking about how absurd the Fed is. So when the Fed raised rates, they released a bunch of their economic models. And you've got a guy who has been, listen, this guy is a Fed cheerleader, has always been. He's a central banker at heart. I mean, he's an economist, but you know, he believes in the power of banking. And just had to say, I don't know what these guys are looking at. These models are absolutely absurd. They said that their economic outlook is way off base. And Jason, we're starting to hear for the first time, people are openly starting to question Jay Powell. Remember, I told you he was a patsy. I have told you this guy has been, for years, I've been telling you this guy's a patsy.
All the Fed chiefs are patsies. They put someone there that can take the brunt of the criticism, and I guess if there's praise, I guess they can have that too. But Joe, you talk about these big banks, and they're susceptible, and the small banks are even more susceptible. When Silicon Valley banks going under, and they have these assets that people, other banks don't want to buy. Well,
won't buy, didn't buy,
and these assets are some of the same stuff that the big banks own. So no, it's not going to hurt the big bank directly, but if they can't sell these assets and the big banks are holding the same stuff, theirs just became less valuable, and it starts to spook this industry very quickly. How are we going to get rid of ours? Let's just say for banks that aren't going under currently. And I remember in The Big Short, Joe, it's really a good visual when they're talking about the mortgage-backed securities getting ready to go under, and Venn is trying to sell it to the guys, and he brings out the Jenga game, and Silicon Valley Bank, that's one of the little blocks that came out. It doesn't collapse the whole Jenga tower, but you keep pulling these blocks out, right, Joe, and the whole thing just comes down, right? It doesn't matter what the assets that are dead and buried that are going to cause this crash, but it's going to happen. One Jenga block at a time, right, Joe, until the thing falls.
And just listen to what this guy has to say. He said it's their economic outlook, talking about the Fed after the rate hike and releasing all these data points, is so off base. I don't care what the market thinks. There is no way. Think about the word. Listen, this guy he knows how to use his words. He didn't say there's only a small chance or there's 10%, 20%, or it's 50-50. There is no way central bankers can lower inflation and stabilize the banking system. it's not possible. He goes, it's absurd to think that it is. And that really should tell you all you need to know about the situation we're in. And again, Jason, we've been telling you for years, they're in a box. There's no good answer here. Listen, I wish there was. Believe me. I wish I could say to Jay Powell, here's what you need to do. Do this. Like I told you, raising those rates was a policy mistake. But guess what? Not raising the rates is a policy mistake, right? It doesn't matter, right? No matter. You do nothing, do something, right? Raise the rates. Don't raise the rates. Lower the rates. Guess what? They're all mistakes. Every single one of them. The question is, which mistake do you like best?
Right, Joe. And I know it makes no economic sense, but this is why I think whether they do it, with their actual numbers, or whether they send this money to places under the carpet like they did in 2010 when we found out they didn't give $5 trillion out, they gave $29 trillion out. That's why I think they're going to be handing out money and raising the rates, or at least at best maybe just stop raising the rates and keep them flat. I think they do both these things, not because they want to do that. It's just because I think that's the only play they got to push it down the road a little longer. Print the money, give it to whatever holes they can fill, and raise the rates to try to stop the inflation from getting worse. That's why I keep thinking they'll raise rates, or at least at worst just leave them where they're at. Because how can you go down to zero? How can you go down to zero right now with inflation? How can
we have a difference of opinion here? I think they're going to save the banking system. That's just what I think. And I already here's the problem. Here's where I sit on it. They're already late. That's the problem. Again, they're late again. Jeremy Siegel again.
Joe, don't they want to be the bank?
The Fed understands the implications of its own numbers.
Don't they want to be the bank though? Having banks fail, doesn't that help their digital currency? Wouldn't that be the play, the script is, hey, well, we're going to be the bank, so now we can go ahead and fight the inflation. And if the banks fail, they fail because we're going to be the bank. I mean, doesn't that kind of make sense?
They can't handle more than a handful of banks going under. That's all they've got, guys. I hate to tell you. They can't handle it. Why do you think Janet Yellen's like, yeah, no, we're not doing the deposit thing for all these banks? Because she already knows these small banks are done. They're done. Sorry, I wish they weren't. And they're done not because of their own volition, it's because of the policies set forth by the central bank. They've been forced to buy these securities at a ridiculous rate of return. And now that the rate of return has gone through the roof, they're SOL. Well, the only way to get them un-SOL'd is get the rate of return back to zero. I don't know. That's just me. Call me crazy. Buy that gold, $11.80 on those $10 libs. We'll be back right after the break. $800-951-0592. It's going to be a dark, dark day. I got taxes are going to have to go way up. Taxes are going to have to go way up. There's no doubt about it. Already, the IRS is letting everybody know the money coming into the Treasury has been slowing at a faster pace as the months go by here. We got debt problems everywhere today. Crude oil, which it's so bizarre because crude's been hammered. Was down, I think at one point got into the upper 60s. It's like $74 right now. Gas is through the roof. You know why? It's real simple. You can set the paper price at anything you want. Anything you want. But physical price is setting precedent. They're trying to kid themselves. Gas here in Arizona is $4.50 everywhere. $4.50. That's the price when crude was like $100. It's like $74 today. I mean, 2 days ago it was $70. But guess what? We're getting these weird reports out The government came out today and said there was 7.5 million barrels less crude this week than last week. Cushing, Oklahoma, down a couple million. Gasoline, depending on the API, said gasoline inventories were down almost 6 million barrels. The government said it was 3 million barrels. But either way, Jason, again, we're fighting this losing fight here, where they're trying to convince people things are really better than what they are. But yet when you look at energy prices, Jason, and again, we're coming out of winter here. We're getting ready to hit spring. I got a feeling this is going to be another one of those whoopsies when it comes to these inflation numbers that the central bank's going to look at. And again, what one are they going to pick? Are they going to fight the inflation? Are they going to try to hedge their bets and not raise rates? Or are they going to try to save the banks and lower rates? My guess is by the end of this, Jason, they'll have done all three.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Joe, that the paper numbers are just weird, and especially if you look at the indices, they're just sitting there for 27 months. We're coming into April of 2023. And it has nothing to do with Biden, but when Biden took office in January, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ are just kind of in the same place for all this time. No downward movement, permanent downward movement, no permanent upward movement. I mean, we use the gold and silver spot price, Joe, and sort of kind of the same as early 2020, 2021, where gold kind of got to that $18,000, $19,000, $2,000 price range. But yet, look at the premiums of gold and silver since 2021. You're going to pay more for the ounce. I mean, look, gold prices are about the same because in 2020, gold got to record levels. And then 2021, it got back up over 2,000, right, Joe? But we weren't selling $20 gold pieces for $24.50 or $24.30, wherever it is on the website today. So just like you said, oil, well, the price per barrel, the paper oil says it's down there $70-something. But here comes these huge, large prices. Things are definitely unhinged, Joe. The inflation skews everybody's views on how this works.
And again, I think it's going to get much uglier here. Yesterday I told you those $10 libs were the stone cold lead pipe lock of the week. I was wrong because today it's even better. $70 less. That's insanity. I've never heard of that. And again, here's the problem, because guess what everyone's going to be buying now? Those $10 pieces. Next thing you know, tomorrow, Friday, maybe it's Monday, and next thing you know, those premiums are way above. This is by far when you're saving $70 an ounce. That's you gotta go and you gotta get them. They're $1,180 a piece. So if you bought two of them as an example, right, that's $2,360. A $20 gold piece right now, $2,430. And unfortunately, Jason, it doesn't matter what the spot price is saying anymore. Up, down, it doesn't matter. The price is up. Why? Because everybody's buying. No, and again, here's the problem. In order to get people to sell, what do? They got to raise the price.
I think the paper prices on almost everything don't make sense to the real value of things, Joe. I think something is manipulated very, very much so. I think that things are very much controlled. And here's the thing with the stock market being flat for 27 months, you've lost money. You cannot buy this. You can't sell your stocks and buy the same amount of stuff from 2021 to today. You've lost money. The stock market's actually crashing in a way, but it's just not the way that you would normally see it. And here's the thing, Joe, I'm not an expert on the 70s. I didn't see how markets performed. I haven't looked at the graphs and charts to really get into it. But I get the feeling that a lot of people were experiencing the same thing in the mid to late 70s and early 80s when this inflation was roaring, right? And here's the thing: people talk about it, like it was a big deal, and it was a big deal. But man, it just seems like the news, it's just there's just not very much urgency about it now. Right? Well, it's just a fact of life. We have the inflation. It's okay. Go buy your expensive groceries. You'll be okay, right, Joe? And most people are just their heads buried in the sand. They just don't get it, and that's a recipe for destruction. This is why some people suffer more than others, Joe, because some people actually look and make smart decisions, and some people aren't looking. They don't want to look at it for what it is.
Well, they don't want to accept why. Well, they fixed it. They fixed it for a couple of days. right? And they don't want, that's all that's it. Well, okay, I'm not going to worry about it anymore because it was stressing me out. Well, don't be stressed out. If you do something about it, then you won't be stressed out anymore. 800-951-0592. It's not even close. The cheapest gold we have right now, US $10 Liberties at $1,180. Jason and I were wrapping up the Patriot Radio News Hour here, final segment of the day. Hang on with us. Eight 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason. And we had a caller call and said, hey, can I get a discount if I buy 50 or more? Okay. 50 or more, $1,175. Okay. There you go. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but listen, premiums are high. That's just what it is. Every time I turn around, Muhammad Al-Arian. So this is another guy. This guy's been coming on the TV for like 20 years. Okay. He is on CNBC and Fox every week. Banking is based fundamentally on trust. Right? It is, right? We're trusting that my money's going to be there. Because like when you put the money in the bank, you don't own it anymore. You're not the owner of the money. The bank is. Any erosion in trust can and does lead to economic outcomes that were deemed highly unlikely or even unthinkable just a few days earlier. And that's really important because it happens that quickly. Hey, we're on top of it today. All of a sudden, tomorrow rolls around. And Jason, situations that were unthinkable, highly unlikely. Think about before we heard about SVB. What were we talking about? Oh, it's probably going to be quarter point rest of the year, right?
Yep.
A few days later, I'm telling you, the Fed made a policy mistake by raising rates again. Matter of fact, most people think the Fed has made a policy mistake. And now you have people actually openly questioning Jay Powell's leadership. Jason, that just tells you there's not a lot of trust in the banking system right now, and that's a problem.
I think the policy mistake was 1913, putting the Fed in charge to begin with. How's that?
I am still waiting for where are people calling for ending the Fed? We don't need to do this way. The Treasury could issue debt and not have to pay interest to the Federal Reserve. I mean, we could absolutely do this. And matter of fact, this country has done it before. You know what was amazing? When we didn't have the central bank, Jason, we seemingly didn't have a lot of debt either. Didn't those two things kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah. We had no debt or any significant national debt through the entire century, the 1800s into the early 1900s. All this debt came in after the Federal Reserve.
With no central bank.
No central bank. No central bank meant very little or no debt. And unfortunately, it's we'll do a more historical look on it sometime on one of these shows in the future. But it's an ongoing battle when it comes to central banks and a sovereign country. And man, when the bankers are pushing and pushing and pushing, they start with their individual banks and they tie themselves together and link themselves together. And then eventually they just push the government. It's like, hey, government, you just crashed again. You crashed. It's never the government's fault. It's not the people's fault. It's the banking system creates stress to the people who use them. And then it's like, all right, I'm a government stooge and I don't know what you're doing. I guess you can do a better job counting the beans than us. So go ahead. And then they just give it to a central bank. And look where we're at now, Joe. We let somebody else count the beans for over 100 years, right? It's
right.
We're in a terrible position.
It's time for us to get back and count our own beans, as Jason said. $10 Liberties, $11.80, 50 or more, $11.75 at 800-951-0592. Jason and I, we're coming right back with the half empty cup.